I'm on a quest to climb the highest mountain in every country. Along the way, I'll stand on everything from humble hills to mighty mountains. Today's adventure takes us to the beautiful county of Cornwall. Although perhaps not the Cornwall you know, with the large expanses of beach and rugged, storm-battered cliffs, but instead the desolate and still stunning Bodmin moor, which is where the county's highest point and one of the hills I'm climbing today is located, Brown Willy. My route will take me to 3 different tours, as well as several historical sites, ending at a tour that personally I think is incredibly cool. I did this walk with my family, which means you'll be hearing a lot of voiceover from me, as I'm too socially awkward to speak at a camera when there's other people around. We started out from Rough Tor car park, crossing a river before making our ascent up the sodden ground from the previous day's rain, but I guess that's just what you get on moorland. We opted to ascend the summit of Rough Tor instead of following the easier path that skirts just to the side of the summit. This tour is almost as tall as Brown Willy, and certainly looks as impressive, and maybe even a little more imposing, with the large granite rocks that we had to clamber our way across to reach the top of the tour.
Rough Tor. Yay. Good views.
In order to reach the true summit of this tour, it required climbing onto the top of one of the rocks, which was actually quite hard as my walking boots were slipping a lot on the damp rock. So for this tour I had to get out my climbing shoes, and obviously I requested some cool photos that made it look like I climbed up much more of the rocks than I did. Once I'd gotten my fix of scrambling, we began the descent from Rough Tor into the valley between it and Brown Willy. Along the way I saw this pretty cool rock window, which you can just about see through to the other side from my photo. There's Brown Willy. And here on the other side is Rough Tor, where I've just come from. I think Brown Willy looks much more like a mountain than High Wall Hayes, Devon's highest point, despite it being 200 metres shorter. The climb up towards the summit of the hill was pretty steep, but not too far, as the valley between the tours is fairly high elevation as well. During the final part of the climb, I actually ran so I could beat my sister to the top, and I'm glad to say I did. And here it is, silhouetted against the clouds. Here's the full view of the Cornish countryside from the county's highest point, even if slightly obscured by the mist. I imagine if the sky was completely clear you could probably see water or the hills of Dartmoor on the horizon, but I guess that's just wishful thinking. At this point in the walk, we split up, with my mum and my sister returning to the car, while me and my dad continued further on to the moor, to walk to a tour that for now should be nameless, because I need something to keep you guys watching. Please watch the video. We descended down the opposite side of Brown Willy, which felt somewhat like a ridgeline, as the rocks found at the summit continued all the way down the spine of the hill. Here's me eyeing up the rocks for some bouldering. Oh, and here's me attempting it in walking boots. I would not recommend this. They're not good for bouldering. This was not the last time I did this while walking off the hill either, as more and more rocks kept appearing out of the clouds. Near the end of the ridge, the clouds began to clear and we were finally somewhat sheltered from the wind.
This is a very nice spot here. You can hear a cuckoo, lots of birds, and there's these rocks here, which are pretty cool. Yeah, it's a nice spot, really like it. I think there's potential for some bouldering here as well, which is pretty cool.
At the base of the hill we reached a gravel track that should have taken us all the way to the tour, but upon reaching a gate that very clearly stated no entry, I had to quickly replan the route, and I'm glad I did, as we got to see many more interesting things on the moor. The first section of the new path was pretty poor, with walking becoming more like hopping between islands of peat, trying not to twist an ankle or get your feet wet. But we did get great views of the hills around. You can see the path here on the right. After a while we crossed a small wooden bridge. Here's the bridge before I crossed it, and here's the bridge after I crossed it. Truly thrilling before and after, I know. We then made our way towards a house at the top of this field. It is literally in the middle of nowhere. There was no road access to this place, but yet I think someone still lives there, at least some of the time. Properly rural house. We followed the track for a while, until we turned off towards a forest.
It is a stile with no fence. World's most pointless stile.
We then crossed another stream. This one was really pretty, with the mossy rocks and conifers around it. After that, we began heading slightly uphill again and started to see some ancient features.
It's a stone circle.
And then here's me, in said stone circle. Nearby there was something called King Arthur's Hall, which is basically just a big square of rocks with some old marsh in the middle. Supposedly no one knows what it was actually used for, but most people agree it was important to someone for something. It's certainly rather old, 3000 BC kind of old. Shortly after we descended towards some farmhouses and crossed yet another stream. This one had some stepping stones, which I unfortunately didn't get any photos of. And then began our final ascent up the Tor, which was also where we were meeting my mum and my sister. As we climbed up the other side of the river, we could finally see the Tor.
That is Alex Tor! Yay! There's the two that started with Rough Tor and Brown Willy.
So yeah, I added a large distance onto my walk, just so I could climb a Tor with the same name as me. Honestly, I think that's a pretty valid reason. And with the power of editing teleportation, I'm now there. It isn't the most impressive Tor on the moor, nor the tallest, but it does still have some cool rocks and great views of the moorland around, including Rough Tor and Brown Willy, which typically now have no cloud on them. Oh, and that rock I'm standing on, it wobbles. Probably the biggest rock I've ever seen do that. So that concludes my Cornish High Point walk with 12 kilometres of distance and 400 metres of elevation gain. Some ancient ruins and beautiful views. I'd say it was a good day of walking. See you in the next video.